Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hey, I met you. You are not cool.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
You goddamn communist heathen, you had best sound off that you love the Virgin Mary, or I'm gonna stomp your guts out. Now, you do love the Virgin Mary, don't you?
Visit us at IHateCritics.net, IHateCritics.com, Everyone's a Critic Podcast.com. We're on Facebook. We have a group. Our Twitter and Instagram handles is CriticsPod. There you can participate in our top fives, watch the trailers, read reviews, blah, blah, blah. All that fun stuff. Please go like us and follow us on all those platforms. That way we can keep up to date with news. We are toying around with the idea of, was it Summer of '84? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
We're toying around the idea of hosting kind of a meetup, I guess you would call it, a podcast meetup on Friday the 24th. I almost said the wrong day. It's in Bloomington, Iowa. It's from the guys who did
Burlington,
whatever. I have been. Yeah, you're gonna have to be doing this all week, all episode long. I hope you. This started before we hit record. It's been a busy day.
We'll be talking about Do the Right Thing later.
Yes. And Jaws 3. But yeah, Burlington, Iowa, summer of '84. It starts at like 9 o'clock. It's $6 to get in. It's from the guys who did Turbo Kid. Kind of a Stranger Things vibe. Kind of.
Yeah, these guys seem to be wrapped up in nostalgia meets synth pop and synthwave music and everything like that. So, I mean, it's right in at least my wheelhouse. The film itself, I don't know much about it. The trailer isn't exactly like super inspiring, but at the same time, It's an interesting concept. I'm certainly down for seeing it, if nothing else. Yeah,
and it's technically certified fresh at the moment. A low fresh, but fresh nonetheless. Mm-hmm. But it'd be nice we rarely ever do anything with our audience, so if people want to come out and hang out and go see the movie, one, let us know if you're going to do it, but I'm planning on going. I think at this point it sounds like Josh is and Sean should be, depending.
You're driving, right?
Sure. It's not that far, is it?
Less than an hour.
Right. So yeah, it'd be nice to meet up with some listeners and finally get to put a face to the names.
Yeah.
Even though we probably have met you before. But that's coming up again, August 24th in Burlington, Iowa. Did I say all that right?
Yes, you did.
Yes. What else? iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. That's where you can listen to us, all your other podcatchers. If you could still go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe and rate and review the show, we'll read the review on the air. Give us a 5-star review if you can. If you absolutely hate us, you hate us. It's whatever. But it's fun. It helps us move up the charts. And that's important. And then Patreon, IHateCritics.net/Patreon. There you can get our bonus podcasts, access to merch that we don't have at the moment, and other credits on the show and whatnot. We are going to put a PayPal link up there too if you want to buy the bonus episodes, and if you'd just rather support us via PayPal, that's an option too, I guess. What am I forgetting? News, I guess. We'll start with our trailer, the Slaughterhouse Rules, Simon Pegg. Is Nick Frost in that one? I don't remember.
Yeah,
I just watched it.
Looks like a cameo, I think. Yeah, at least a cameo. I don't know. I like Simon Pegg, and I guess this kind of feels like an Edgar Wright movie, even though it's not. It's weird. It's got there's monsters or aliens or something in this, right?
It appeared that way, yes.
Yeah, I'm neither here nor there on it. I guess I'm. As much as I think I like Edgar Wright, I'm not a huge Shaun of the Dead fan. I like Hot Fuzz okay. Love Baby Driver and the Scott Pilgrim movie.
Well, this is just his crew, though.
Yes, I know. It's not him.
It's not him.
But I'm not. even though his crew only like a couple of the movies. So
I'm with you.
Yes, Simon Pegg himself isn't strong enough to lead a film and have me interested as a supporting player. I've always been down for him in that particular role, but with no Edgar Wright, I don't have a whole lot of faith in this one. A lot of Simon Pegg stuff that he's led has actually gone direct to video. I think something about Happiness or whatever. Other things have gone direct to video for him too. So he's not a star. He's got genre stuff like this that can work, but I'll just kind of be skeptical going in.
And as far as I know, that's the only trailer. There is Oscar news. They're going to create a popular category.
Yes. So this is something that the Academy is basically recognizing that they've screwed up pretty badly. Only 29 million viewers at the Oscars last year, which is pretty low for them. And in reaction to that, they're now promising that they're going to make it into a 3-hour show for sure. That they're going to limit it as best they can to a 3-hour show. And they're introducing this popular film category, which they're not necessarily defining as of yet as to what counts as a popular film. But it's pretty much just like the animated Oscar, really. It's just a way of bringing more variety of movies to this telecast, bringing other bigger stars to the telecast who might not be there without this category. And everybody's yelling at the Oscars for doing this, like you're selling out or whatever. I mean, the Golden Globe's been doing this for years and drawing a bigger and bigger crowd. You think that the Academy wasn't going to do this eventually? I mean, the broadcast film critics, we do this. We've had these categories. We have more than that. We've many more of these categories. We've got best action movie, best horror movie. We've got best cast, best child actor. I mean, we've got dozens of other categories that the Academy doesn't have. Rob Lowe was kind of the one who struck me on Twitter, who said, "This is the death of film." When was the last time you let a fucking movie, dude? How long has it been since you've actually been in a film? Calm down, Rude. Calm down, Rob. It's all right. I don't care. This has always been a pretty significant popularity contest, and maybe if we'd had this category, we wouldn't have to deal with Lord of the Rings.
Gosh.
Sorry, I had a heart palpitation there.
Just had to stick that low blow in there.
Okay. I'm okay with it. I don't think that it's the death of anything, but it is an Oscar. There's a particular prestige behind saying like, oh, it won the Oscar for, or at least there had been in the past, and it seems to be. I always look at that as the standard bearer for awards if you care about it. And introducing popular film, I would like to know what the parameters are before I start really forming an opinion. But I was thinking that when you see most of the film slate being sequels and superhero films and stuff like that, that's what most people are seeing. And so when you get to Moonlight and when you get to La La Land, even though that was reasonably popular, you get to films that the Academy pays a lot of attention to, the mainstream audiences aren't going to see them, so they're not going to tune in for what happens with Moonlight. Not that it shouldn't be tuned in for, but I understand where they're coming from. If we're going to treat everything else like, oh, it's a business, it needs to operate with a profit, etc., then I should operate under that same opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Oscars are stupid to begin with.
Yeah.
They're only the standard bearer when it's convenient. But this also, for me, I'm speaking for it, it won the Oscar. But at the same time, I'll be like, yeah, but that year sucked. Crash won the Oscar. Forrest Gump won the Oscar, So it's, I'm kind of sick of award shows, especially when it comes to art type things. What's better? Is Moonlight better than La La Land, or is La La Land better? They're both great movies. You can't, it's hard to choose. It's just your personal preference. So I don't really care. To me, I look at this category like the ESPYs. Well, what grossed the most? Technically, that's your winner. That's the most popular movie.
And box office, as we call it, or ticket sales, as I'm sure they're going to call it, will factor into this, along with probably a fan vote. I would guess they'll probably put up a fan poll. So that'll play into it, and then the Academy voters as well will be part of it. And this is just speculation, but I think that's the way they're going to break it down in terms. So they'll have ticket sales, they'll have fan voting, they'll have the Academy votes themselves, what they say is what they viewed as popular. And there's probably going to be some weighted portions to that, which has the most. But I think this is a sneaky way of really keeping Black Panther out of the Best Picture race, and same for anything. Any of the animated movies that might sneak into the Academy race for Best Picture. Good luck, you're gone now. You're out of the way now. You're in this category.
The article that I read about this did state that perhaps it'll get Black Panther some attention at the Academy Awards.
I think Black Panther's got to be the front runner for this. Honestly, it's not the highest grossing movie of the year, but it's close enough. And then you add the artistry of it and the popular swell behind it. I think it's the favorite to win.
Now, do they put this at the end of the show? Like, this is the last Oscar? That would be stupid. But...
No, I think it'll open the show.
So everybody turns off?
But speaking of where the categories are going to go, obviously this means that the technical Oscars are going to move off the main broadcast, probably move online.
Probably the right move.
Probably up at ABC's website. We'll probably have a pre-show of about 2 hours that'll have those technical awards. You
don't think they'll just put them on that other day where they have like Jennifer Garner go down there and give away awards or whatever? I don't know why I picked her, but just move it to that day. I don't know. Yeah,
I think those branches are big enough to demand that they stay on the same day.
Yeah, but I don't care really. I think they're dumb to begin with. And then, how was your movie pass experience this week?
Well, I feel kind of like an idiot. I mean, I went to see a film yesterday, so we took one car. Beth didn't want to see it, so my phone was mounted to a thing on the dashboard. I went into the theater and I'm like, oh crap, I don't have my phone. Tried to flag her down. Oops, there goes the phone. And I'm like, well, the Meg wasn't on there anyways. It's okay. I get my tickets. We sit down. Beth comes into the theater. They let her in to give me my phone back. I'm like, oh, well, thank you for doing that. I just said, let me check and see what MoviePass says. And the Meg was effing available. So, thanks, MoviePass.
For playing Lucy to your Charlie Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm getting emails that state like on Monday, go see Slender Man. On Tuesday, go see Mission Impossible. So it's almost as if they are saying like, we're going to get it, but like maybe a little bit later. But Slender Man was available this weekend too.
The only two available for me were Slender Man and the Meg, but that's because I've seen everything else that was available. So I don't. BlacKkKlansman was not available, which I think it sounds like they're just going to do the popular movies now instead of just all the movies, which I guess works. It sounds like they have some sort of a game plan that might work. It seems to be a decent deal. We'll see how it goes. I still had peak pricing, though. I don't know if my app needs to upgrade or not. I didn't have to use it because I went at the 10:30 showing, but there was a little peak pricing symbol on it.
The Meg at 120 yesterday didn't have peak pricing listed on it when I was checking it out. So, I mean, that's a good thing. This week in Movie Pass.
We'll keep up to date until the death. For new movies, let's just start with Slender Man so the show flows properly.
All right, the Slender Man. This is terrible. This is
Really?
Another one of those teenage horror movies, and I've got about 5 of them at the bottom of my list of the movies I've seen this year. There are about 5 of these teenage horror movies. Still, Truth or Dare, still the worst of them, but Slender Man is in competition at the very least. This is based off of a game that came out a few years ago online, and the game, of course, that actually led to 2 girls murdering a friend of theirs. So, real classy way of making a movie, guys. Really good. Let's keep this thing alive. It became kind of a meme online. It became like this scary, what do they call it? Creepypastas about the Slender Man. His video game became the creepypasta in the story. And this, you see the Slender Man, you die, I guess, is the thing, or he infects your brain. Which, I felt brain infected throughout this entire movie. But he infects your brain. You can disappear into a tree, or you can, just be turned into kind of a zombie figure. One girl, we actually get to see her absorbed into a tree, so that's about as close to gore as you get in this movie. Otherwise, it's just a series of silly jump scares and that aren't very jumpy. And I even had the D-box for this, and the D-box with the moving seats, the movie doesn't have anything going on, so the seats barely do anything. I kept kind of pressing the buttons on my seat to keep the seat moving, just to kind of, because you got the thing where you can set it
Right.
3, 2, or 1, and so I just kept pushing the button back and forth, just kind of to move my seat around, so I would at least feel something.
The guy next to him was like, "That's not fair. He was moving my nut." Actually, there was no guy next to him because
No.
nobody went to the theater.
It's terrible. Don't waste your time, and it's in really horrible taste. So thank you, Hollywood, for keeping this piece of crap alive.
Well, in fairness, the internet's keeping it alive. I mean, my kids know what it is without really knowing the real story because I don't even know how they know. But, you hear about it at school, they start talking about it, and it just becomes this urban legend thing. But I don't know.
Wasn't it? Slender Man was in The Conjuring 2, wasn't he?
I don't
If I
think he
remember
was
correctly.
actually in it, but a character that looked like him.
A character look okay, and the whole idea behind it is slightly terrifying because there are multiple people stating it across various locales and whatnot. As I understand it, I don't know if I have my story right because I know you've seen the documentary, right?
But the documentary is more about those two girls. It's
Okay.
not so. I mean, they go into the urban legend that I guess started at a game. I don't even remember where it came from, if it was a game or.
It's just a silly online game. Is where this started.
That's what I'm thinking because the movie sounds like it would be way more interesting if they had ignored that game part and had really dove into the idea of the urban legend of it instead. And basing it off of just that just seems like a bad way to approach it. The scary part of it is the people believing it over different places, the coincidence of it.
I don't really think there's anything scary about this that hasn't been done before, though. I mean, what movie doesn't have a character that if you see them 3 times or whatever, they fucking kill you? I mean, or whatever it is, 2 times, or you see them in a mirror, or what the fuck?
Bloody Mary.
I still want to see that kind of movie. Candyman is that. You say Candyman 3 times. Candyman,
yes.
Candyman, he shows up. I mean, Beetlejuice 3 times, he shows up. I mean, there's a legend in Kewanee, Illinois, the Kewanee Deer Man. If you see the Kewanee Deer Man 3 times, you're dead. I mean, this is the
Half
silly
deer, half man?
yeah.
Oh.
This is the same trope. Just again, it just happens to be online, and it happens to have a creepy illustration of what basically is Angus Scrim without a face. I mean, it's so stupid. This is a stupid idea, and it should not have been made into a movie.
Yeah, but it's already profitable, so.
Of course.
Yeah, I had a funny story. I had a chance to ditch my kids and take my wife to a movie Saturday night, but I needed to see BlacKkKlansman for the show, so the only way she would go is if I went and saw Slender Man instead. And I said, "I'm sorry, you're just going to have to stay home." Because she wanted nothing to do with BlacKkKlansman. Dog Days.
Dog Days. Yeah, this is what's called supremely low expectations. I thought for sure this movie was going to be terrible. I even had a critic friend who texted me in the midst of her screening going, "This is just awful." And so I went in with extremely low expectations. This is directed by Ken Marino and has numerous stars who people recognize from comedy and podcasts, people like Tig Notaro and Lauren Lapkus, and just a really terrific group of people who are very funny people. And they turned out a pretty funny movie, especially if you're a fan of dogs. And I don't have a dog, but I like dogs. And this movie's got plenty of cute dogs. So it's got cute dogs. It's got a couple laughs. It's coherent. It's not annoying. I kind of like this movie. I don't get why people are being so angry at it. There's a lot of critics who are just ripping this movie just because I guess they just don't like cute. I don't know. I mean, this is certainly Show Dogs is 50,000 times more offensive than this. With its talking dogs and farting, that was basically the plot of that movie. This movie's no talking dogs, just maybe a little bit of too much Vanessa Hudgens. Other than that, I mean, this isn't that bad. She's not bad at all. She's cute, and the whole movie's cute. Ken Marino directs just well enough, and he's got a lot of funny friends. Tig Notaro has like 3 scenes in this movie, but she's got 3 huge laughs. Lauren Lapkus, she gets a laugh every time she comes on. David Wayne from The State comes on, gets a big laugh playing a clown, gets a second big laugh later on. So there's a lot of really funny people who come in and get a big laugh out of it. So I don't get it. This movie's harmless. It's forgettable. It's if you like dogs, it's a fine enough dog movie.
Moving right along. Let's go to BlacKkKlansman.
BlacKkKlansman, yes. This movie, this is incredible. So this is based off of a true story, directed by Spike Lee, and starring Denzel Washington's kid, J.D. Washington. He plays Ron Stallworth, who was a real-life Colorado Springs cop. Similar story. He joins the police force and quickly moves up the ranks because he's willing to go undercover inside of a black student union to infiltrate and find out what Stokely Carmichael is saying to a crowd of kids. He immediately gets himself promoted to the intelligence branch, where he initiates an investigation into the Klan just by seeing a Klan recruitment in the newspaper and making a phone call. Pretending to be a white guy. And he eventually builds it up to the point where he actually has his own name on his own Klan card, and that's a real thing. Ron Stallworth, the real Ron Stallworth, has one of those with his name on it. It's a pretty epic piece of history, but Spike Lee has basically made a movie here that is a critique of now using the past. He's taken Ron Stallworth's book and used it to make a statement about racism today, and he's made a very incendiary and completely awesome and necessary message. This movie is so great. This is classically Spike Lee. This is the best thing he's done since, I would say, 2002, 25th Hour. I would say the last time we saw a real Spike Lee movie. Inside Man is a good movie, but it's not necessarily a Spike movie. He's had some glimmers there, like Chirac has some glimmers of the old Spike, but this is like Spike back in the day. This is like 80s and early 90s Spike. With
I don't think he's been
classic
mad
art touch. Yeah,
I
exactly.
think he needed something to, because the shit he's been, some of it just kind of, he'll speak up on, like when Clint Eastwood didn't put a black person in a movie that didn't have black characters. You kind of got mad for no reason at all, and but this one finally has a reason, and I don't know. And the funny thing is, even if you take away everything that it means, it's still a fun, watchable movie. Mm-hmm. So it works on several different levels. Did you get a chance to see it, Josh?
No, I didn't.
It might be my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's in my top 5.
Yeah, it's hard to. Hereditary is still right there. I had a couple of problems with Sorry to Bother You, but that's right up there in the top 5 for me as well. This one is just as much fun as it is, similar to Wind River. All of a sudden it ends, and it just pisses you off all the way home.
And it came out this weekend is the 1-year anniversary of Charlottesville, and he's got the Charlottesville actual footage at the end of this movie. It's terrifying and horrifying, and the way it plays so perfectly into the story that they're telling with BlacKkKlansman is really something. And the angry reactions you hear at the end of this movie, especially when the president shows up, the boos, you hear actual boos at a movie theater. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, and we all have had the new Mark Maron special. He starts the whole thing off going, you voted for him, now I have a decision to make, and that's, and we all have those family members or friends that, voted for Trump. And when the Charlottesville thing happened, they were on Facebook saying, hey, look what they did wrong too. And it was, it was we all have that.
Very fine people.
But we all have that experience when you're watching this at the end of the movie.
And that clip's in the movie.
I'm sure it is.
But then you're bringing your own personal things that you've had to deal with, separate, obviously the people that were there, and actually African Americans have way more to deal with, but the stuff that, family members or in-laws that you're just like, can I cut you out of my life? I'd like to, especially the in-law stuff.
It's a conversation starter, this film, as I understand it. Would you call it that, or a conversation ender? I've seen both.
It's kind of a mic drop movie.
Yeah. I think people probably would not go see this movie if they didn't already know that they were going to agree with it.
I do think, like Michael Moore preaches to the choir a lot. Mm-hmm. The only reason this preaches to the choir because only the choir is going to go see it. But I do think it does a good enough job playing it down the middle and just playing the facts. Mm-hmm. the Black Power people aren't 100% innocent in this. You know, they have their issues where they're wrong, and he doesn't shy away from that. It's very much down the middle movie, and it's just phenomenal. Denzel's kid.
He is really great, and when you hear those little vocal inflections, you're like, that is so Denzel.
And even when he pretends to be white, it's not the sorry to bother you stuff. It's
right.
It's real, and it's not played for laughs, although it's funny at times. But they play it straight.
Mm-hmm.
The
David Duke stuff in the movie is real. This really happened. The only difference is there's a scene near the end where they kind of reveal everything. David Duke thought Ron Stallworth was a real guy till 2006, when somebody was fact checking Ron Stallworth's book and gave him a call.
So that phone call scene wasn't real.
I hope that doesn't take anything away from me, but yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't take anything.
Because it's still a great scene. It's still funny.
I think that scene is necessary because they're not writing the book in the movie, so it kind of bridges that gap.
But how great is Topher Grace at being the butt of the joke? He is so fantastic.
The whole cast is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Adam Driver is great.
So much to play there, too. He's a character named Flip Zimmerman who has to be Ron Stallworth, so he's Jewish and has to go into this whole thing listening to these guys and having specifically one guy who's just constantly on him about kind of looking Jewish and just constantly on him about it. But again, another realistic touch. He was a member of the Klan for about a week when they asked him to be the leader. That's how disorganized the Klan was, that they started talking to this fake Ron Stallworth about being the leader of the Klan, or the organization, as they call it, because that's part of their anonymity thing.
But it is I really do urge everybody to go and see this movie, because one, obviously Slender Man and Dog Days are this as well, but movies that aren't, Avengers or Star Wars, it's something. It's not part of a universe. It's its own thing, and it's creative, and it's new, and it's really, really good. It'll definitely be. I don't know how it gets knocked out of the top 10 for me, whether it stays at 1 or not, or 1 or 2, who knows? But it is such a fantastic, watchable movie that happens to have a message with it. But if you got rid of that message, it still works as a movie by, a great movie on its own anyway.
It's fresh, it's funny, it's classically Spike Lee. It's him again. It's seeing Spike again, and that just makes me so happy to see Spike again.
And there's this scene, similar to that. We talk about the Almost Famous moment, the Penny Lane moment, where you watch Adam Driver when he's constantly being, accused of being Jewish, and he is, but he's never really thought of himself as Jewish, and what they do to him and put him in that moment. He does a fantastic job in the scene of just kind of all of a sudden, for the first time in his life, having to kind of question where he's from and think about his heritage, and you feel for the African Americans and the true Jews, and it was a phenomenal scene that alone.
And the way he plays that, he plays everything with his eyes during a few scenes, and it's just, you can just see the contempt flitter across his eyes for just a moment, and then he catches himself, and you can see the rage just kind of go past him just for a moment, and then he's got to collect himself. And the way he does that with just his eyes is remarkable.
Yeah, because that's the other thing, is they're both there. Was it J.D. Washington?
Yeah.
He's always either watching, or at one point he's there in the he plays a bodyguard to David Duke.
Another real life touch that actually happened.
Wait, are you serious?
Yes.
It's a phenomenal scene.
That is irony.
Where he actually has a man snap a photo. It's pretty fantastic.
But they're
real photo.
They're cops. They're undercover, and that glimmer in their eyes of making the right move as a cop versus the undercover guy versus, they're doing everything so perfect and keeping everybody safe, and it's just it really is a perfect movie.
There's actually talk of Harry Belafonte, who makes a cameo appearance in this movie, getting an Oscar because he does this incredible 5 to 6, 7 minute monologue in one scene, and it's not. it's not based on history, but it's such an amazing scene. The actual thing that he's talking about is based in history, but his character is an invention of the movie. But it's still, it's powerful. It's cross edited with the Klan watching Birth of a Nation, and I mean the amazing way that Spike cuts this together. You can see J.D. Washington is kind of watching it from the back, and just the anger on his face. Meanwhile, this meeting is going on where all these black people are getting very upset and emotional over the story that Harry Belafonte is telling, and it's perhaps possibly the most perfect scene in any movie this year.
Right. And they do, like, both sides are not preaching violence, but one side is preaching hate and the other side is preaching equality and love and peace and all that. But they still get, all the black power and the white power, that's basically they get divided into that, and they're both bad. That's kind of, there's a section of the people that we live with today that do that, and it's really not that. And that scene is so important to really help you understand.
And not just the overt racism, but the supporting of things that clearly they just don't understand the message. And because you don't understand the message, which one is it? Is it because you just don't understand, or because you don't want to understand it? It's a very convenient way of still maintaining your subpar values. I would probably be angry watching this. I wasn't able to go see it because I'm not going to take my son to see this movie,
right.
But also I know that watching it, it's going to just make me emotional and mad. Everything like this is important to see, but
I'll tell you what, though, it wasn't until the end, like the movie's over and they start showing the Charlottesville stuff, that's when I got angry. It truly is an entertaining movie that just happens to be really smart and have a good message.
I didn't realize there was that much actual footage of what happened.
I know. And it just, like, I have just stuff that I kind of ignored, but I had people I should block that happen to be related to my wife that she doesn't really care for. They were just saying stuff like, at least the white power people didn't cover their faces. And I'm like, what? They put a white thing over their face. Are you kidding me? And they're posting the, violent stuff that they did, probably in reaction or probably not even related to this. It's just, I don't know. I understand the Republican, the right wing. I understand that mentality, but when you're standing next to someone with a swastika on their shoulder or a white hood on, at that point you just kind of go, maybe I need to rethink where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And this movie does a great job of explaining that without really being offensive about it, with really, like, just doing a perfect job of doing that. So I highly recommend everybody go and see this movie, because it really is fantastic, and Spike Lee is made, up there with all those other great movies. You can just put it side by side with all of them, really.
Mm-hmm. It's up there with Do the Right Thing and 25th Hour and Summer of Sam. That's my group of Spike movies that I think are masterpieces, genuine masterpieces. I did publish my top 10 so far just today on Twitter, just kind of randomly, and this one was number 4. And it was Hereditary number 1, Night of the Virgin number 2.
Wow.
Sorry to Bother Me number 3. This one was number 4.
Yeah.
And 8th Grade number 5.
Which I haven't seen 8th Grade or Night of the Virgin yet. But
surprisingly, just to not to get too far on a tangent, but I had Unsane at number 10.
the Soderbergh movie.
That movie just stuck with me so much.
I watched that recently. That's a really good movie.
That's really good.
I'm to that point where I'm really wanting just to see new original movies that aren't part of a franchise, that are just their own thing. And I was probably way too nice to Skyscraper, but just the fact that it really was based on nothing made me happy. And I'm kind of feeling that a lot this year all of a sudden, and it's been a couple good weeks in a row here. The Meg.
The Meg. I was talking about low bars. This one had a pretty low bar to get over, and it did. It got over with me. The Meg is like, imagine, like, let's take a real movie, like, say,
Jaws.
French Connection and say compare that to Fast and Furious. Like you can like them both, but for different reasons. Like, although, and it's kind of like this. This is kind of what that Meg is kind of what that is to Jaws. You know, Jaws is a real movie that's made by a real director. This is a movie that is far closer to Sharknado, I would say, than Jaws, really, in terms of seriousness and in terms of goofiness. The special effects in this movie suck. Like, that shark is not impressive at all. But the whole rest of it is so much fun. The characters are fun, and the story has enough color and stupidity to it that I didn't mind so much. Jason Statham is the star here, and he's never been this much fun. Really, he's so more relaxed than I think he's ever been in a movie. Like, he's finally kind of like The Rock may have rubbed off on him a little bit. Like, he's finally not just that bullet-headed guy who's just constantly forward motion at all times. He takes some time to be actually vulnerable in his relationship to the female lead, which I thought was a rarity for him. And so that impressed me a little bit. I mean, this isn't a good movie, but it's a fun movie, and I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the fun of this super giant shark movie. It's not well made. It's not well structured. Like there's a bizarre thing where they have like, oh no, it's 2 sharks. No, it's 3 sharks, or whatever. How many fucking sharks it is? And then there's 3 giant sharks made it out, but no, it was a 2 shark. Couldn't tell. Couldn't care less. Like, the movie seems to end about 2/3 of the way through, and then, oh, hey, we found another shark. Stupid, but nevertheless, I was happy enough with the rest of the movie that I didn't mind.
Josh?
It is a lot of fun because my bar was pretty low too. I have been waiting for this movie since I read a magazine article on break at my first job in 1995. So that's how long this has been in development. It's based off of an actual novel, if you can believe that. I don't know how close it is to that novel, but the direction is what's missing. John Turteltaub has done a lot of things that I've seen before. I think he's the director of Phenomenon, just to give you an example of the type of film that he would make.
Probably the best known for the National Treasure movies.
Oh. Visual vomit. Oh, I hate those movies. Okay. Needless to say, you understand then a little better what he's known for. This one, the problem with me is that it's missing that aspect of what would make the Meg scary for me, which would be the idea of giving us on screen the perception of the size of this thing and the perception of where you are in terms of how deep in the ocean you are. There's no wide shots of the ocean. There's no wide shots of the shark in relation to like a swimmer or something like that. It's always a front-on camera angle or something that's coming straight on. There's nothing coming from the side. It's a little weird that way.
Yeah, what is it like? Is it like tiny? Because is it like just super long or something? Because like, how does it get that close to the beach if it's that big?
Exactly.
It's the stupidest scene in the movie.
Exactly. And there are some overhead shots that show, the shark going underneath all of these people and whatnot. But then in that particular shot, it doesn't seem nearly as impressive as when it bites down onto the research institution, which we see in the trailer, okay? That scene is impressive because it's like, oh my gosh, you really get an idea of the scope of this thing. The scene towards the beginning of the film where a submersible gets trapped underneath this frost layer, okay? There's some interesting science there, even if it's quasi-movie science going on. It's kind of cool, the thought that all of these prehistoric animals are living just fine underneath this layer of frost in the water that you can't quite get under with probes and whatnot. I like that. I like the thought that they've allowed for the possibility for this thing to exist. There's a giant squid down there. There's all sorts of different species that we've not seen before. All of that coming through and getting out, ooh, it's kind of like opening up a different dimension, but within the Earth. That's cool, but the filmmaker doesn't know how to keep that feeling lasting, doesn't know how to get us thinking of any of the ramifications of this happening. They just allude to it. And Jason Statham, yeah, I'm with you. He's finally chilled out a little bit in this one. Not in every scene, he's not scowling or his shoulders aren't constantly, hunched over or whatnot, ready to battle somebody. There's no real punches being thrown in this one that I can see from him. No karate moves, which is kind of neat. It is fun. It just misses being like a whole lot of fun. For example, I would say the Rampage was more fun for me than the Meg, which is slightly disappointing. I did want to be scared by the Meg. I wanted it to freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, they almost played this more like an action movie than a horror movie.
Yeah.
Which I think probably explains a lot of what they could have done to make it scary, which I think the Jurassic World movies did better than this, too. But, yeah, I mean, what do you think? They're at the bottom of the ocean, but they sure can get there quick and
Real fast.
And, I mean, 6 miles doesn't seem like that much when you think of how big the ocean is and the world is. Oh, we could go down 6 miles and we're there. I think, really? Just not... I mean, I don't know, but... It's still fun. The whole cast serves a purpose. It's the type of movie you can take a kid to because of the way it ends. You know, they'll get all heartbroken, but then, hey, guess what? They're all alive.
He means the sharks.
Yes. I mean, the people that do die, they're either small characters or the bad guy, so you don't really care. I mean, you care a little bit, or you care just enough. I don't know. It's a safe movie. But you're right. There are some cool, impressive scenes, but for the most part, it's just a fun little action movie. The ending, the first ending Sean was talking about to the second ending, I mean, that was an intense 15, 20 minutes. Kind of pointless, probably, but it was still, a lot was going on, and it really had you kind of, if you allowed it to be, I guess. But it's fun. I wish my son chickened out. He wanted to see. He kept talking about it over and over again. And then he decided to go to my daughter's gymnastics meet instead. I skipped that for the Meg, by the way.
Dedication.
I had to clean the house, too. And, of course, I didn't do a good enough job, and that's part of why I'm forgetting words. But, yeah, I mean, go see it. That's worth seeing. Especially if your movie pass is working.
Shouldn't it be called the Megs? I mean,
because
the Meg indicates there's just a singular...
Technically, that's a big spoiler. There's two of them. We did just kind of say that. But,
oops.
I mean, I don't know. It's... it is what it is.
There is very little gore in this movie, and very little, and without that aspect of actually getting to see people like eaten. Like, you get the idea that they're eaten, but you don't even see like in Jaws, you're seeing plumes of blood and like limbs falling to the bottom of the ocean. You don't get that here. There's none of that here.
I did read an interview with the director this week that stated that they had to cut a lot off of the film to make it into a PG-13 film. So in essence, they're going for the dollar as well, and that makes sense. You can sense that this film took a long time for a reason why there's multiple production companies involved. I know China is partly financing this film. You've got a couple of Asian actors in the film as well. There's a whole storyline where you pay attention to what they're doing specifically, even if it doesn't necessarily flow with the plot. So I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to make money here. Fine. It's fine. Just nothing memorable.
Yeah, I had $130 million budget or something like that. You can't really make it rated R.
No.
They've already made their budget back overseas, so.
Well, right, but they might not have.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized Undisputed Classic.
Our Undisputed Classic is Jaws.
Yes, Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg, 1975, the movie that began the blockbuster era. And interestingly enough, this movie did not open like we think today. Like, it actually only opened about 300 screens nationwide, but that was the most screens that any one movie had been on at the same time in history. So that's what made it the first blockbuster. The marketing campaign, as much as anything, seemed to make this movie out to be something more than it was. And then it turned out to be that this is actually a really great movie because we've got Steven Spielberg directing it. And so he's just at the top of his game. Like, right off the bat, this is only, his second or third feature, and he's already just so assured and so confident in what he's doing. The way he sets scenes is just so clever. The way he sets up his characters is so smart. From the very beginning to the very end. I mean, the way he introduces characters is smart. The way he brings Roy Scheider in, and Roy Scheider is just so perfectly played. And then the introduction of Hooper, and then, of course, the introduction of Robert Shaw is one of the great film introductions of any character ever. And he just steals the entire movie. He just takes it home with him. He just takes it away from two younger, better-known actors and just robs them of the entire movie by being so amazing as Quint. He's really the whole movie for me. I can just talk about just what Robert Shaw does with that one scene of talking about the Indianapolis. It's incredible. It's a masterclass of acting. But that's not even. But I mean, that's just a number of really fantastic things. And for the record, I don't care that MythBusters showed that you can't blow up a shark the way they did. I don't care. I'm happy with the way they did it.
It's fantastic. It's in my top 30. It's one of those things that I kind of forgot about for a long time, how good it was. Watching it as a kid was a major thing. I mean, it did make me scared every time I went into a pool, let alone, like wanting to go near the ocean, considering sharks, period. And so it was very effective towards 5-6-year-old me. But there was a long period of time where I didn't watch it in my teen years and 20s. And then coming to it, I think when the Blu-ray came out was in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. I watched it again, not remembering a whole bunch of the movie. I'm like, oh my gosh, did I never watch like the first 15, 20 minutes and a couple of scenes there on the boat, including the discussion of the Indianapolis? So I would say over the past 6 years, I've seen it 4 or 5 times. Everything about it is perfect. I tried to dissect it while watching it this week. There's not a single scene that I have a problem with, and that's so very rare. But it's the character moments that really make this movie elevated over something more than a monster film or a scary shark film. Roy Scheider's moment with his kid, mirroring everything that he does, is a perfect little amalgam of bringing him back to reality for a moment. Hooper discussing with the mayor why the mayor needs to do what he does, and one of my favorite lines of all time is, "I'm not going to deal with a guy that's lining up to be a hot lunch." That is one of my favorite lines ever. And Quint, not just with the Indianapolis story, but with the song that he keeps singing, that it's just so memorable. His intonations, the entire film, the way that he condescends, but also somehow you can see that he eventually does need them, and it was a good thing that he had them with, and he kind of gives in after a while. And that moment where he says to Hooper, like, "What kind of things do you got to kill this shark?" You can see in his eyes that he's so reticent to finally give up the ghost, that what he's doing is not working for this thing. There's not a single thing wrong with this movie to me. The gore is really intense too. The couple of scenes where the shark has got Quint, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film, I mean, by now you've had 40 some years. The first bite is intense, but then that second one where he's spitting up the blood, that's a thing. And watching my boy see this a couple of years ago for the first time, and watching him get all tense and actually shy away a couple of times and jump a couple of times, that's cinema magic right there. Like, I can't possibly imagine anything in the past couple of years that I would have taken him to garnering that sort of reaction. It's just gold. And then watching somebody who I live with watch it for the first time this week and be so underwhelmed by the film and taking it in a way that I never thought she would take. I almost wonder if you need to have this in your life when you're younger to make it as effective. It's not that it's a bad movie. It certainly isn't. But its impact upon us may have something to do with the fact that we saw it when we were young.
I think this movie has been remade a million. I mean, The Meg practically tried to remake it. There was several sequels. We all know the stories. We're not shutting the beach down, and yeah, they probably wouldn't do that in real life, but maybe in '75 they would have. I don't know. I wasn't around back then. So, I mean, I get why she would feel that way, but I think that has a lot to do with what Jaws' impact on pop culture was, and that is going to affect people seeing it for the first time, I think. But really, those three, Roy Scheider,
Richard
Dreyfuss, and Robert Shaw, they own this movie. I always jokingly said this movie was great in spite of Steven Spielberg because the shark broke and that's why it's so good. But really, that does play a role. Don't get me wrong. But those three really, without that chemistry and that, the latter 2/3 of the movie that they kind of own, that really does. Like you were saying, Josh, the character elements is what really make this movie, a step above just a monster movie.
Yeah, it's interesting that if you watch this movie on Amazon, it's still listed as PG. There's no way if you release this movie today that this is a PG movie. It's so funny to me. Like, you can show this in theaters now and it still has to carry the PG rating. And it's not PG. This is not a PG movie. Because there's a leg. The guy's leg gets bit off and you watch it float to the bottom of the ocean. There's a dead guy at the bottom of a ship and you get to see his face underwater. That locked in terror.
That induced a scream from the couch. That was enjoyable.
There are blood plumes coming up from underneath people as they're being eaten. Like, this movie does not shy away from the blood and guts of what's happening, and that's
Shark
part of
eats a kid.
Yeah. Like, that doesn't happen anymore in movies.
Yeah, that was the first thing my kids asked is, did the dog get eaten in the Meg? And I was like, no. You think it does.
Neither does the kid. The one that they focus on in Thailand.
Happens to go from here to over there, which makes no sense at all.
Yeah, the Meg has magic submersibles and somehow a time-traveling child.
Yeah, but yeah, Jaws is it's a classic. That does make me want to ask the question though, if we're rating in the Oscar scale the new popular versus real movie, where does it land? I mean, I think it kind of goes in the popular section.
It would have won popular.
Well, it would have won, but
75.
I think that's where you need to put it in popular versus real, for the lack of a better phrase, because it really is a blockbuster.
It is, but at the same time, where do we cross that line? Because this is the kind of film that I would say this is why we go to the movies. And yes, the summer blockbuster was like born from this, but the summer blockbuster is also the reason I get excited, to get that little tingle when I think about cinema. It's not, no offense to anything that's an indie film like BlacKkKlansman, to be a great film. Okay, I'm excited to see it. But I don't get that same tingle as I do when I think about, I would love to go see when 2001: A Space Odyssey is going to be re-released in IMAX. Like, that gets my spine tingling, okay? There's just something about it that makes me wonder, popular, it is one of the best films. So I can't just put it in the popular film category, at least on my end.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I feel like whenever we do that, it's always convenient for whoever's saying it. It's easy for me to say, but this movie deserves to be there. And I guess for me, the reason I wouldn't put it there is simply the fact that it is a slightly heightened reality, not quite played in real life. And that's stupid because I would put other movies there that are. So it makes no sense. Either way, it's one of the great horror movies of all time, and largely due to the cast and director. And lack of shark.
Robert Shaw robbed of the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
Who won that year?
No idea, but they didn't deserve it.
Number 18 in 1988. Squeezed and pulled and hurt my neck in 1988.
Squeezed and pulled and hurt your neck in 1988.
1988. Well, let's start with the one that means the most, I guess you could say, in terms of popular culture. Not like a gangbusters blockbuster, but a movie that was successful enough and had a lot of people in it that everyone recognized to spawn a sequel, and that would be Young Guns. I had never seen...
Not Last Temptation of Christ.
No.
It has a sequel, The Passion.
Yeah,
anyway, continue.
We've covered Last Temptation. We'll get there. But Young Guns, I watched it for the first time this week, and all I can say is bad direction can really, really affect your experience of a movie. The performances can be fine. The shootouts can be intense. The resulting gore of someone being shot can be impactful. Scenes involving peyote can be interesting. If the direction sucks, though, and the film starts the way like this one does, where it's introducing everyone by face and name like a television show, then, in the way that the film ends, too, I'll get to that in a moment, but then all of a sudden you're dealing with something that just isn't professionally done to me. In the camera work itself, the way that the film plays out, the haphazard nature of the decisions that these characters make, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So what all it is Billy the Kid and Doc, played by Kiefer Sutherland, and Emilio Estevez plays Billy the Kid. All of these characters working together towards an eventual shootout that seems inevitable. It's just them. Like, if you like these people, then it's a fine movie because you're enjoying people that you're either attracted to or, you enjoy watching them on screen. I was, for one, kind of bored. I don't understand what the significance is behind this film at all. Maybe Young Guns 2 is a better film. It definitely, I see that it has a different director than Christopher Kane, but it's just so poorly shot that it took me out of the film a number of times.
This movie's awful. Just plain straight up awful. Every aspect of this is so bad. We've got Lou Diamond Phillips and his capped teeth and beautiful shampooed hair. You've got everybody in this movie looking incredibly pretty, like they walked out of a shampoo commercial.
Except Dirty Steve.
Except for Dermot Mulroney. Dermot Mulroney is apparently the only one who understands he's making a Western, apparently, because he's just dirty and his cheeks are full of tobacco and he's just disgusting and he can't talk. Like, he's in a Western. Everybody else is just, they're at a shampoo commercial. Did you notice the way... And Netflix, they don't ban you from using our four-letter words. Yet this sounded like I was watching the fucking the edited version of this from TV, because the way they call it, hey, shut up, dirtbag. Like the dumb little things they come up with in order to avoid saying bad words. It's like, well, we got to make sure that the teenagers can go see this movie.
It's still rated R. The version that we watched on Netflix this weekend was still rated R, which is strange. I can only imagine it's because of the violence, because than ass and shit and whatnot, there's no real harsh language.
They go hard out of their way not to use four-letter words for whatever reason.
That is odd.
It's so strange and it's so unnatural. Like, you can just tell they're almost giggling and having to say these things. I think Kiefer Sutherland almost breaks up at one point when he's trying to say one of these dumbass lines. Charlie Sheen could not be more bored, and you could just almost see him begging for that moment when his character's out of the movie. He just has nothing to do, nothing important to say. He's just the most bland character. And Charlie Sheen, say what you will, he's never been bland in a movie. This is bland.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him at all, really. And the scene right before he leaves the film, there's a face-off between him and his brother, and that in itself is kind of interesting. You're like, oh, they're playing different characters here, but you know that they're brothers in our world, so like, what's going on there? There's a little power dynamic, and then the movie gets rid of Charlie Sheen. So
he was just in it to do a favor for his brother Emilio.
It certainly seems that way.
Probably was what it was. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the fact that we got Tombstone later on, that was a much better popcorn Western, that ruined this one. I don't really know what it is, but this was a movie made for just specifically by marketers trying to get teenagers to watch Westerns in 1988. I'm sure there was a pretty big MTV push on this one, even though they didn't have the John Bon Jovi song for this one. But there's definitely that element. Like, you can hear a lot of hair metal in this music that sounds like Bon Jovi that isn't Bon Jovi. I think at one point, I swear to God, he actually makes a reference to Bad Medicine in the movie, and it sounds like he's actually, like, he goes out of his way to say Bad Medicine in a weird way. That's like, oh, let's see, 88. Yeah, that was about the time the Bad Medicine came out. Did he say is what I need?
Not quite, but there are two things that are ancillary to the film that I thought were kind of interesting. Number one, if you understand that song from 1993, Warren G and Nate Dogg's "Regulate,"
Yeah.
okay, the first part of that song, they talk about regulators. We regulate every steel minute of this property. We're damn good too. I'm like, I'm watching this movie. Within the first 20 minutes, they're talking about regulating every steel minute of this property. I'm like, oh, that's from Young Guns. Oh, that's interesting. So
it really makes you
just
look sideways at Warren G.
Totally killed a street cred.
Yeah, for this movie, yes, because it's garbage. But towards the end of the film, right, we've got a shootout in this house where they're trying to save a lawyer played by Terry O'Quinn, and people get out of the film except for Dermot Mulroney's character and Casey Simasco's character. He's playing Charlie, and then there's a voiceover at the end of the film talking about Billy the Kid's life and how he was later killed by Paul Garrett, who Pat Garrett is in the film. And then the voiceover says Billy the Kid was buried by his friend Charlie. I'm like, we just watched Charlie get blown away 10 minutes ago. What the hell? So the film has no interest in anything other than showing you a lot of pretty faces. Thank you for the shampoo comment. I was amazed how beautiful their hair was throughout the film. It's like a Prel commercial set in the Old West.
They were like electric razors and toothpaste,
right?
too.
Exactly.
It seemed like it. Lou Diamond Phillips' teeth are immaculate in this movie.
Don't forget his hair, too, that beautiful black mane.
Oh, flowing locks.
It's never been dirty his entire life, even though it's the 1800s. The idea and that for the sequel is that they take on that urban legend that Billy the Kid didn't die at the hands of Pat Garrett, that he lived to be 101 years old and was alive to tell his own story. And I can recall seeing that. I think it was in 1990 they did the sequel, and you get to see like Emilio Estevez in some of the worst old man makeup ever created.
Interesting. They recast Pat Garrett for that film with William Peterson, as I understand it. And this movie is played by a different actor. So,
Was Bon Jovi in the second one?
Yeah, he has a cameo in the second movie. I think he gets shot by Billy the Kid, if I recall correctly.
Was he riding on a steel horse?
Did he go down in a blaze of glory? That's the real question.
I'm pretty sure, yes, he did.
Man.
Just such an awful, awful film. Really terrible.
It was definitely disappointing. It never at all reached this status of, I understand why it was popular.
Put your top five. Who's your top five?
Top five movies from the cast of Young Guns. We'll start with Michael Carlson from the Awesome 80s podcast. He actually broke it down by the three guys that matter. Kiefer Sutherland, number 5, Stand By Me, 4, Lost Boys, 3, Dark City, 2, Flatliners, 1, A Few Good Men, Charlie Sheen, 5, Navy SEALs, 4, Lucas, 3, Major League, 2, Hot Shots, 1, Platoon.
I can't hear Navy SEALs without that guy from Clerks.
Ooh, Navy Seals. Emilio Estevez, number 5, The Way, 4, Rebo Man, 3, Breakfast Club, 2, The Mighty Ducks, 1, Men at Work. Uncle Jeff had number 5, Stand By Me, 4, Lucas, 3, The Breakfast Club, 2, Copycat, and 1, August Osage County.
Ooh. Ooh.
Do you have yours, Josh?
I do. I did, despite your hashtag of saying that I would automatically go with the entire cast of Young Guns. No, I stuck to the 3 leads. Number 5, La Bamba. 4, A Few Good Men. 3, Dark City. 2, Major League. And number 1, The Breakfast Club.
I didn't, because Sean told me not to.
I didn't know there were rules.
Number 5. Well, it wasn't rules. I was just being a dick. Because it made me laugh.
He thinks that I wasn't going to see the hashtag.
Oh, no,
Lo and behold, I
knew
did.
you'd see it.
Okay.
Number 5, Hot Shots. 4, Being John Malkovich. 2, Dark City. I was going to put A Few Good Men at number 2. I'll just put Batman, because isn't Jack Palance?
Yes. He is.
Yeah. And then number 1, Platoon. I have not seen La Bamba, and I'm not a big fan of The Breakfast Club.
Who is in Being John Malkovich?
It's Charlie Sheen. He plays Malkovich's best friend.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Which, how shitty a joke is that on him? Anyway, I had a top 5 that includes I guess I've got Dark City in there, and I've got Batman. I've got About Schmidt. Badlands is actually at the top of my list because Charlie Sheen has a very brief cameo in Terrence Malick's Badlands. And, of course, La Bamba is on my list as well because La Bamba is far more incredible than people give it credit for. But, I mean, I could throw out, Malkovich, obviously. I could throw out Breakfast Club. About Schmidt with Dermot Mulroney is a pretty fantastic movie. And, of course, 8 Men Out. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
Fair. God damn it. What the hell is wrong with me? I try and pare it down, and then I forget everything.
It'd be easy just to do a top 5 Charlie Sheen, but...
Oh, yeah.
Not that easy.
He's in most of the movies we have on our list.
Yeah.
More or less.
I'm thinking 5 already. It's all good. Okay, also in 88... We'll start with Mac and Me.
Have you seen this?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's so incredible.
There's a story behind it, too, that this week came to fruition that is pretty incredible.
Beautiful.
This is an E.T. redux, or at least they tried
Rip-off.
really hard.
It's a ripoff.
Rip-off.
Rip-off with, like, promotional materials everywhere.
Literally produced by McDonald's, right? And Coke.
Mac. I get it. But somehow the special effects 6 years after E.T. are worse than E.T. The alien looks terrible. The story involves this alien helping out this handicapped young boy, help him believe in himself. I don't know. I saw it when I was 10 on HBO or Showtime, something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, okay, the synopsis of the film said in the vein of E.T. or something like that. I'm like, oh, I love E.T. I'll watch this. And I remember even as a kid thinking, boy, this sucks. Like, it's not even Short Circuit, you know? It tries really hard to get on that level.
Oh, so terrible. Do you know why this movie has stayed in popular culture for so long?
Because of this myth that there was footage.
There's that, though, but there's the Paul Rudd is the reason why this movie stays alive.
Okay.
He every time he appears on Conan O'Brien, they instead of cutting to a clip of his movie, they cut to a clip of Mac and Me with the kid in the wheelchair being thrown off the cliff. There's a kid in a wheelchair. He goes off a fucking cliff. That's in the movie. He survives it.
Amazingly.
Yeah, every time Paul Rudd is on Conan, they show that clip instead of showing a clip from his movie that he's promoting.
What were you talking about?
Well, in the American version of the film, the kid survives, okay, and the alien leaves, if I'm remembering this correctly. However, as confirmed this week by the film's producer, there was an alternate ending shot that actually did play overseas, in which the kid, in trying to get he's wheeling himself towards the ship in which the aliens are taking off. The kid actually is shot by police, and he dies. Like, they're trying... It's E.T. with a major bummer ending, okay?
That's amazing.
Right, and I saw this clip this week.
It's
because
glorious.
The producer released it, and it's like, holy shit, what is wrong with you people? Why would you even shoot this scene?
As I understood it, he confirmed it after somebody else found the VHS overseas, put the clip online. He goes, yep, it's real. They didn't make that up.
Yeah, and they're releasing this film on Blu-ray for its 30th anniversary. They either have this week or it's coming up shortly.
They weren't sure if they were going to be able to include this on the DVD or not.
And they aren't. That scene is not going to be on there. But the film, I guess you could have those movies where we always say, well, they're never going to do anything like that, right? They're not going to eat the kid or the dog. Well, they blew the kid away in this film after he went off a cliff.
I mean, that's why I'll never forget Meet Joe Black. Sure. 3 weeks in a row we mentioned that movie, but
this kid, I mean, he gets thrown off a cliff, and then the ending of the movie is him getting shot. And the cop trips. The cop trips and over something, and his gun goes off as he's falling down, and he shoots the kid in the back as he's rolling away.
That's pretty amazing that they thought to do that, and that McDonald's and Coke were behind it.
Yes, you don't see that. And then it's in this family film. Wow. I encourage viewers to try and find the clip.
It's a wonderful film, and I got to give a shout out to a guy on YouTube named Phalis. If you watch Phalis in the movies, he did this movie, and it's one of the funniest things on YouTube.
What a terrible movie!
Actually, worse than Young Guns, but far more entertainingly.
Yes. So also coming out this week, one that I didn't get to watch for time purposes, if anything like that, called Clean and Sober, and it stars Michael Keaton, Kathy Baker, and Morgan Freeman. As you can imagine by the title, Michael Keaton plays an alcoholic, and it's him dealing with the ramifications of that, as I understand. Now, because it's Michael Keaton, I really wanted to see this because he's quickly... not quickly. I mean, I've known him for over 30 years, of course, but it's one of those things where I realize that I love his performance most of the time that I'm watching a movie of his. So he's probably one of my top 5 actors, male actors, I should say. I didn't get a chance to watch it, though. I don't know what the history of it is.
I do recall that he was in the running for an Academy Award. There were lots of very positive notice about his performance, and that he didn't get there are a lot of people who believe he didn't get a nomination because everyone saw him as a comic actor and not a serious actor, so the performance wasn't taken as seriously as maybe a performance of a dramatic actor might have been in the same role.
Yeah, this one, and a couple of years later there's a movie called One Good Cop that's a serious film, and I always confused the two because the video jackets were somewhat similar in him looking serious.
That one's terrible, but this one's
fair enough. Okay, when also coming out in 88 this week, 30 years ago, was The Last Temptation of Christ. It's directed by Martin Scorsese. It's almost 3 hours long. Willem Dafoe is Jesus, and Barbara Hershey as Mary Magdalene. We've covered the film on the podcast before. My memory of our opinions of it are, we can tell that it's a good film, but it also is like, the performances were good too, but also like, oh man, that was really long, and it seemed like homework at times, and I'm not sure what he was trying to go for there. I remember talking about Martin Scorsese, whether it was a reflection of his experience in the church that led him to make this film, but if you can remember.
I remember the like the New York accents.
Yeah, Harvey Keitel. Yeah.
And obviously the controversy of Jesus having sex. But
yeah, that's pretty much all there is to remember. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's Scorsese, so I mean...
Well, it's fantastic, but it's kind of a once is enough type movie.
Yeah, you never need to see it again.
And I've seen it twice. The second time was on our show, so no way I was going to watch it a third time.
I watch it every Easter.
Followed with its sequel?
No, I watch that during Halloween.
Oh, okay. Best horror film ever?
Horror fix.
I like to break my horror movies up. That's the torture porn genre.
Oh, okay.
It's like the best
horror
one.
Subgenre torture porn.
Passion of the Christ.
Thank you. Subgenres. Excellent.
So that's our show. Next week, we've got Crazy Rich Asians, Alpha, Mile 22, and hopefully another indie movie pops up.
You never know. Mile 22, they've done a terrible job of marketing this movie.
I know.
I have no idea what this movie is about. I know Ronda Rousey's in it. That's about it.
And they're not really using all the hype she has right now.
Yeah.
She's in wrestling. She just got put in the UFC Hall of Fame. She's actually relevant again, and they're not really doing much with that.
Terrible job of marketing this movie.
Not to mention Mark Wahlberg.
I think it's directed by Peter Berg.
It is.
Yeah.
What the hell? They've done an awful job putting this movie out there.
Yeah, I thought it was actually based off of something too, like a graphic novel of sorts.
And then funny,
not a true story.
Oh,
I just Peter Berg and Wahlberg have been overdoing the true story stuff.
Then you got Alpha, which I don't know if you've heard, but the idea of the alpha male has been debunked scientifically. Like, this is not actually a thing that wolves do. So good timing on releasing this movie.
Boy, don't tell a bunch of dudes that I've worked with in my life, dudes that I currently work with, that think that they're alpha males. Their entire life has been based off of that idea.
Get to take a week off. Our classic going along with will be Philadelphia Story. And then our top 5 is Asian actors or actresses. What else? Oh, Patreon. I'd like to thank our Patreon supporters. And one of our key group, Jason Bryan, he's actually going to be in a movie coming up, playing himself.
Really?
No kidding.
Yeah. I have the details. I'm not positive if I can talk about it or not. I don't have like details. He just told me a little bit about it. But it's pretty neat. So we'll hopefully when that comes out, I'll talk more about it. I'm sure it's a on-demand type movie. It seems pretty small, but it's on IMDb already. So we'll talk about that when that time gets closer. But here are our Patreon supporters. Here are key grip levels. Jason Bryant and Charlie Messing. Our character actors, Cousin Jeff, Christina Cato, and Josh Paul.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our special effects level, Sarah Ward and Corey from Ivy Envy.
May the Force be with you.
Our associate producer is Jason from New Mexico.
Everybody has to eat shaving cream once in a while.
And our movie stars are Uncle Jeff and Dave Sievers.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
And if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, head over to IHateCritics.net/Patreon to get yourself a credit on the show and get access to our bonus episodes, which we're going to knock out our next one in a week or so. And that should be out in a couple weeks, 2 or 3. And then I'm going to get a PayPal link up there for those who want to just buy the episode or support us that way. And then if you could, head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the show, rate and review the show, and we'll read your review on the air. Otherwise, stick around for after the credits, so I'm assuming we'll run Jaws through the flick chart. Gauntlet. See you next week.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray. And we're the 3 best friends that anybody could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best 3 friends that anybody can have. I mean the 3 best friends that anybody can have. That's right, the 3 best friends.
Jaws or Liar Liar?
Jaws.
You sure? Jaws or I Love You Man?
Jaws.
Yep. Jaws or Die Hard 2?
Jaws.
Right now it's between A Beautiful Mind and Jerry Maguire. Jaws or Rope?
Jaws.
Jaws or The Shining?
Jaws.
Yeah, probably. Shining's too much work. Jaws or Donnie Darko?
Jaws.
Oh. I can't consult my actual list here. I know they're both in the top 30. So I would go with Donnie Darko.
I think I'd go with Jaws for the same. Donnie Darko is too much work. But I mean, The Shining, they're all kind of right there. And at that point, which one am I going to watch first? Jaws or High Fidelity?
High Fidelity.
High Fidelity.
I don't know. Probably Jaws, but once I watch High Fidelity in a couple of weeks, it might change. Jaws or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Jaws.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Jaws or Heat?
Jaws.
Jaws.
Jaws is more work, but it is a better movie. So Jaws is stuck at number 10 behind Texas Chainsaw Massacre and above Heat at number 11. Josh and I did a good job moving that up a few months back. So now our top 10 is Almost Famous, Good Will Hunting, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Chasing Amy, Juno, High Fidelity, Dogma, North by Northwest, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Jaws. That's not horrible.
That's not bad.
We'll have fun moving. We'll probably have to run high. We'll see what High Fidelity can jump up a few in a couple weeks. Anything else before we get out of here? All right, we're done.